So, some of the stuff that happened since the last time I was filming for YouTube and today is some minor upgrading. Sort of minor, anyway. You know, not too big a difference. Well, anyway, this is where we are today. And we're going to get into this. And I'll tell you a little story about it, because, of course, every big piece of equipment I end up getting usually has a story behind it. So, join me for all that and more. So, basically, all I'm doing today is getting this machine set up and ready for running wheat. So there's a couple of settings that need to be changed on it, because the last thing this ran was soybeans. So some of those things will include the sieves and the chaffer, which are down here. Basically, it's a big shaker that more or less gets everything separated by letting the heavier stuff fall to the bottom and the lighter stuff kind of blow out, because on the other side of this, down towards the end, there's a big fan mill that blows a bunch of air through here, and it blows all the light stuff out and lets the seeds kind of fall to the bottom. And then up here you've got the straw walkers. So what these do is they'll oscillate back and forth on this little crank anyway, and it'll push all the straw out the back and into this chopper, which will then shred everything nice and fine, so that it's easier to incorporate in the ground when I till it all back under after I spread some fertilizer out there. So one of the things we're going to have to do here is get the cylinder drive put into direct drive, because right now it's set up in the reduction setting so that I can run a little bit slower for beans and corn. So you don't really want the cylinder to run fast for those, because you'll shatter kernels or break beans. But wheat needs to be thrashed, and at that description really requires it to be spinning very fast, so it actually beats the seeds off of the plant. And to get there, what we have to actually do is take this lever and get it out of the way by removing this pin, and then we're going to line up this so that it all ends up connecting to one of these back here. So essentially it's very easy. All you have to do is come in, take this little pin out, get that out of your way, yank that out, and this just goes ahead and gets out of the way and stays there. It's on a spring. So now I have to take this and rotate it. I'll show you real quick. There's this notch here, and that allows clearance for the pin to go through, but it's got to line up down here where the little retaining clip is for the pin. So you take it and you spin it around, make sure it lines up so you've got clearance, which we do. Slide that right in there. And then the cotter pin here goes right back where it was before, up behind. And that's it. We are now in direct drive and ready to spin at the speeds necessary. Because without that, the cylinder only gets to about 600 RPM, and I'm looking for more like, 800 to 1,000, maybe 1,200 depending. But we'll get into those adjustments when we get out in the field, because we'll be fine tuning once we see what the seed's looking like coming out. The next adjustment's going to come into the concave. I've got a little indicator down here that'll tell me about where I am. The book recommends between 2 and 6. So to be able to tell what I'm doing here, I have to go up in the cab and rotate a handle. And it's hard to get my hand in here, but there's a little indicator pin right here. And I want to get it, I'm going to put it in like the 2 to 3 range, because last time I was out in the field with the Massey, it seemed like the tighter concave setting was better. Granted, this is a little different than the Massey, but I'm going to just go off of what I know from that and go from there. With this in mind, though, if I end up seeing that I'm cracking seeds, or it looks like I'm beating up the crop too much, one thing I can do, knowing that I'm already tight here, is to just open the concave up a little bit, maybe go to 4, 4.5, 5, something like that, which would really help. On that note, Another thing that can kind of disrupt seeds and hurt them is cylinder speed that's too fast. So that's another way to try to combat cylinder or cracked seeds and such as well. So those are all things you have to take into account when you're harvesting and trying to get things straight. So back up in the cab now, we're going to have to start the machine, and we're going to be watching this tach gauge right here. I've already had it running earlier today, so the temperature's up a little bit in the engine, so we should be ready just to roll. So you can't actually adjust this speed unless the engine's running, because the pulley squeezes and separates in order to make the surface either larger or smaller, depending on what you want, to spin the cylinder faster. Think of it like gearing on a bicycle. The smaller the gear in the back, the faster you go. The bigger the gear in the back, the slower you go. So right now we're trying to put it on the little gear. So I've already had it maxed out because I didn't realize I had a 2-speed cylinder. So I was running around 600 RPM with everything engaged at full throttle. So we should see a pretty dramatic difference now once I get everything engaged. Yeah, here I am at idle, and I'm almost at 600 already. So I'm actually going to go ahead and back down that speed a little bit. You see it dropping there. Bring it to about 300 so we're not spinning at Mach Jesus when I throttle up here. So we're going to go ahead and see what the engine's doing and get her up to operating speed. Now we're sitting at 600 at 2100 RPMs. So to speed that up, I'm going to shove this lever forward, and I can hear it working. We're going to try to get up about 900. Back her off a little. So now we're spinning around the speed we need to be going for wheat. Now my fan needs to be increased. I think, well, maybe not. Looks like we're already spinning at about 750 RPM. I'll probably leave that alone for now, and if it looks like we've got too much chaff coming out the back, I'll go ahead and speed that up. But I think we can start at that speed. I think we'll be all right, because wheat's pretty light anyway, and I think the book was recommending around 800 RPM, but I have to double check to verify that. Other than that, now all I got to do is adjust this until that little indicator at the bottom is reading like 2.5, 3 is where I want to try it. So I went ahead and cranked on that a little bit, and you can see now we've changed over to about 2. So I'll probably leave it there for now, maybe put a couple cranks back on it when we get in the field, but I think that's a good place to start. And if we're not cracking too many seeds, I think it may just stay there. So the next thing to adjust is going to be the sieves and the chaffer. You want to make sure the gaps in these aren't too big. This is kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the video. So these little flaps will tilt up and down, which will effectively close the spaces in between. And you want them to be relatively small when you're doing wheat, because of course the wheat's pretty small to begin with. The seed's small. You don't really want anything passing these sieves other than seeds. So if you leave them too wide, you have a good chance of getting a lot of debris in the tank. So the way you adjust those is through these levers here. And I have to reconsult the book real quick to double check on which way to go, because one of them controls these and the other one controls the lower ones, which are the chaffers. So I can't really see exactly. Oh, that's right. I've actually, see, this is new to me, machine. So you pull this pin here and this pin here, and then you actually have access to seeing your chaffer, which actually there's the adjustment for that. So actually the sieves are just adjusted up here because you got the forward sieves and the rear sieves. So that's what I'm going to have to adjust now and get them down to the right sizing. So this is a simple adjustment you just use a tape measure for, and just make sure your gap's nice and tight. So one thing to notice, this is the rear sieves, and I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it looks almost like scales lifting and lowering back there. And that's how you get them to adjust. And then I got the front ones here, which come up and down, just like the back ones, just closer up. Now I brushed on fan speed adjustment. That's something I have to do from down here. So what we would end up doing is starting the machine and running it up to RPM. Or not even RPM really, because we're down here and can't watch. So you would twist this knob here in one direction or the other, depending on if you want to speed up or slow down your fan mill. And what it does is what the other thing does, the cylinder drive, and it'll open and close a pulley, except this one's just done manually instead of with electric over hydraulic. But like I said, I think the fan's actually set to a good speed. We'll go ahead and fine tune that if we need to, if we're looking like we're getting too much chaff inside of the grain tank, because the fan will really help with that. The only downside is if you run too fast, you'll start blowing seeds out too, and wheat's pretty light, so you don't want to go too crazy right off the bat. But all in all, that's pretty much all the adjustments I need to do to this before we get into the wheat field. Anything else after this, I'm going to just do basic checks, make sure everything we're good. No nests anywhere that there shouldn't be. I've already done a couple of quick checks to make sure I could run it just this much. But essentially, that's all that's left, is just to make sure everything's ready to roll, greased up, and functioning as it's supposed to. Next thing I got to do actually is to bring the grain head up here, and then we'll go over that as well, which is not too much to go over. It's kind of like a hay bind. You just end up with you know, the sickle section, the cutter reel, or rather the reel itself, and then a wobble box like the hay bind. There's a chain drive that runs pretty much everything. It's hydraulically driven, so it's pretty low maintenance. Other than that, that's pretty much it, just making sure everything's greased up. And then we should be ready, and then we can pull in my fairly pathetic wheat crop for the year, because unfortunately we had an extremely dry spring, so I don't even know how good we're going to do out there this year. But we'll get her up, and then we'll put some beans in after it, and hopefully all will be well then. Get some good rain this summer. So on to the story about this machine. Unfortunately, it's another one of those circumstances where a farmer passed away and the machine became available. But the farmer that passed away was a good friend of mine's dad, and so he was always willing to help me if I needed it. Always told me to call if I needed help, and he even rented me a tractor for a time for an extremely good price just to get me out in the field with it. And you may recall that video. I was trying to do some deep rippage to kind of prepare a field for wheat that I was trying to put in. That ultimately didn't end up working out too well, but these days things are a little different and I'm doing a lot better. Anyway, same guy, or different machine, and it was actually his wife who was wondering if I was interested in it, and my buddy, together basically, he contacted me, asked if I was interested in it, and I told him I didn't have much to spend on it and gave him a figure, and he talked to his mom, and well, from there they said yes, and I kind of got nervous because I didn't think it was actually going to happen, and then I had to line some stuff up, and well, in the end they worked with me, and it's here now. So kind of in honor of him and their farming, I'm extremely pleased to have this, and I would like to continue its operation and care throughout the rest of its life. Because to be honest, I don't think I'm going to need another machine bigger than this anytime soon. As long as this thing stays in good shape, which I'm going to try to make sure it does, it's probably all I'm going to need. And he took phenomenal care of this thing. I'll show you some of the stuff I'm talking about. So before they sold it, they actually replaced this clean grain elevator completely. So you'll notice it's kind of a cleaner, newer looking John Deere kind of paint job. It's because that whole elevator's been replaced, new bearings and everything too. And it's just one of many things they did. All the belts are in great shape. Anything that looked like needed replacing got replaced. Everything on it essentially is 100% field ready. Chains, I'm trying to think of the other things. That's right, this elevator was replaced as well, so I guess they were getting kind of thin. There's a tire on the other side they replaced as well. Oh, and the pan underneath the feeder house, that's brand new as well. Those tend to get thin, so that's another one of those wonderful things that tends to wear out and is replaced. And then again, like I said, everything else was just checked up on and made sure it was ready to roll, and so it's good to go. Even the grain head, they replaced the wobble box, even though it wasn't showing too much sign of wear, but they know it's a weak spot, so that got replaced. And they redid the floor on it, and everything was basically just made perfect for when it was going to get sold. And then, well, it did, and here it is. So I'm very grateful for all that. It was really good forethought, and it's really setting up the next person, so I'm really happy they thought about that. So we're going to have a pretty cool harvest season. I think it's going to be pretty quick, especially for the wheat. Later this year I've got some beans that we're going to do, so that's going to be down in another town, and we'll get into that when we get there. But for now we're going to just do this wheat. And if I can, I'm going to try to contract some more wheat around here for baling. Because it's a walker machine, those things I pointed out earlier, It's actually really easy on the wheat straw, and you actually make really nice straw bales out of it because of that. So hopefully we'll get this thing out in the field in more than a few places, and we'll have a nice harvest season. But until then, catch you on the next one.